I call this regular meeting of the Village of Villa Park Planning and Zoning Commission to order. A roll call. Calvert. Hofstra. Jackson.
Here.
Lemieux.
Here.
Ludke.
Here.
Orlowski.
Here.
Romano. Shalinski.
Here.
And to present. With that, we have quorum. So first item we have is approval of the minutes from October 12th, 2023. Anybody have any amendments to the minutes? Right, motion to approve the minutes.
Make that motion.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion seconded. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. So we have one item of business this evening, or one public hearing. If you're going to speak on the item this evening, I would ask that you stand now. We'll get everybody sworn in at once. If you think you're going to comment, you don't have, standing up doesn't mean you have to, but, or, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It'll save having to do it separately later. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will give in this hearing is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the way the processes will work, we'll start with staff presentation, then the presentation of the petitioner if they have one. Any public comment or questions will be at that point. You could come up here, speak, try to keep it to about 3 minutes. Then we'll move to questions from the commission if there are any, discussion up here, and then hopefully a motion this evening on the matter. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, when you're ready.
It's going to be Stephanie.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So tonight we are going over, 702 South Summit for a variation from Table 2-3 of Article 2, Section 2.3, Lot and Building Regulations of the zoning ordinance to reduce the required minimum side yard setback from 6 feet to 5 feet. The reason for this request is because the petitioner, who is present today, wishes to build a second-story addition on their existing one-story dwelling. As part of our staff review, we noted that variations are allowed in order to grant relief from the strict compliance of the zoning ordinance. And in this case, because the house was originally built encroaching into the setback, we believe that this is an especially fitting request for the addition. And then, let's see, so the zoning ordinance does not allow non-conforming structures to encroach horizontally or vertically into the setback. So this one is not encroaching horizontally, only vertically, so it's being built up. Yes, that is all for my review.
Okay. Does the petitioner have anything they want to say at this time, or presentation or anything? You don't have to, but.
Sure. I mean, we had already submitted.
Could you just state your name and address for the record real quick?
Sure. Amanda Ciccone, and we're at 702 South Summit, Villa Park.
Okay.
We submitted an application stating that the home was built 73 years ago in 1950. It is 11 inches too close to the north property line. Our next door neighbor, Mike, is here. We're not going out expanding anything like Stephanie had mentioned horizontally. We're literally just going up. It's a 2-bedroom house. We have 2 little kids. One is 9 months and living in the living room. As you can see, that the housing market, our realtor's here too, Kathy Smith. For 2 years, we tried to find a home, a 4-bedroom home in Villa Park, that it just is not there. The inventory is not there. So this is our option. We've had the home for 16 years and the equity's there. So in order to further the progress of Villa Park, we'd like to get approval to build a second-story addition and increase the curb appeal and value of the home.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? If so, come up, just state your name and address, and try to keep your comments to about, or questions to about 3 minutes.
You can spell your last.
Okay. Mike Sawinski, S-I-W-I-N-S-K-A. Live at 650 South Summit. I have no objections to them going up. We'd love to have them. It was kind of actually godsend if we could keep them here. So we have 2 little ones, hopefully 2 little ones soon, but we want to keep them around as long as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Questions from, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Chimed in.
706 South Summit, Glenn Brunton, their other next-door neighbor.
What's your name?
Glenn Brunton,
You spell your last name?
B as in boy, R-U-N-T-O-N. We're on the other side, also with 2 kids. 3 kids. And
It's on the record.
yes, I apologize to Dorothy Brunton.
We'll send a copy of the record
Yes.
to Dorothy.
Keeping them in the neighborhood and in their home going up would not encroach on us at all either, and we would be more than happy, we'd love them to stay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, questions from the commission
For the petitioner?
for anyone?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any questions either. One thing I do want to point out, just for the record, is that, Stephanie, I think the petitioner in the memo is listed incorrectly. Should the petitioner be the same as the owner?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to state that it doesn't matter as long as that goes forward to the ordinance, but just for the sake of the memo, just want to make that clear.
This is our 10th petition.
Yeah, so for the sake of the memo, it should have the owner, the petitioner should be listed as the same as the owner when that advances to the village board. All right, if there are no questions, any discussion?
No, if I recall, this was a very similar petition to one we just recently had a few months back. That seem right from everybody on the commission here?
Yes, I've seen several of them. Glad you're wanting to stay.
It's already non-conforming. I think this absolutely hits the requirements to show a hardship.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Is there any other discussion? If not, then we would need a motion.
I will make a motion to recommend approval of PZ 2320 for a variation from Table 2-3 of Article 2, Section 2.3, lot and building regulations of the zoning ordinance to reduce the required minimum side yard setback requirement to 5 feet.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the motion? Okay, roll call vote in favor of the motion to approve, or to recommend approval. Jackson?
Yes.
Lemieux?
Yes.
Ludke?
Yes.
Orlowski?
Yes.
Schlinsky?
Yes.
I too vote yes, and with that, our recommendation passes to the village board, and they have the final say in this matter. So, good luck.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. That will be the close of that public hearing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Crowd dissipates.
Okay, so then the next item we have is a discussion item on the comprehensive plan and sub-area boundaries.
Yes,
Whenever
good
you're
evening.
ready.
This evening, we have representatives from House of Levine, our planning consultants for the comprehensive plan, to go over the sub-area boundaries for input and discussion, so we can get those locked in before we move on to the additional drafting of the document. So I'll turn it over to Josh from House of Levine, who has a little bit of a presentation.
Thank you, Chair and Commission, for having us here tonight. Again, my name is Josh Kuntz. I'm with House Levine, and we are the firm tasked with working on the village's new comprehensive plan document. It's been a little while since we were out here to talk to all of you, so it seemed like a good time to check in. We haven't been, I'll give you a little preview on some of the other stuff we've been doing besides this memo, get you up to speed and let you know what the next steps are as well, in addition to this memo. So, basically, I want to give you an update on the project outreach status so far. We haven't even really scratched the surface with the things we want to do, but outreach has been very good. Most of this will be going through this preliminary sub-area boundaries memo that I think you all have probably seen. And then the existing conditions memorandum preview. We have our existing conditions memorandum document almost complete, so I want to give you a little sneak peek at what that's going to look like, and then we'll talk next steps. Should be a pretty quick few minutes here. So project status, again, you all saw this when we kicked off with the Joint Planning and Zoning Commission and or the Planning and Zoning Commission and Village Board meetings that we did to kick this off. We're sitting kind of across a few different steps. Really, step 2, public engagement, sort of traverses the whole planning process. There's going to be a variety of things as we go along. But we've been mostly working in the existing conditions phase of step 1, and then also starting to dip our toes into step 4, the sub-area plans, which is what you have in front of you. It really is ideal, the way the village did it, to identify these sub-areas up front. So even as we're looking at existing conditions and our team is out doing field work and field reconnaissance, we're keeping an eye, a little bit more of a detailed eye, if you will, on these 6 sub-areas, in more detail than we typically would for like a community-wide field work. Look at some stuff in that way. So these are sort of the things that we've been working on over the past several months. Just to debrief quickly on community outreach so far, Mark and Stephanie have probably shared some of this input with you, but very impressive online questionnaire participation. As of the latest time that we checked it, we're at 685 participants online, so people are tuning into the process. We also had those kickoff meetings, and then Map.social is getting some traction as well. Sorry. Map.social is map, M-A-P. .social. That's a online mapping tool that we've put together for the process, and I'll show you what that's looking like in a minute. But great participation, especially considering that we haven't had our community visioning workshop yet, so the word's still getting out. That map on the right is one of the maps that will be in the existing conditions memorandum. There's an optional question in the community questionnaire that asks people to identify, if they so choose, where they live in the community. And you can see that they've tuned in and participated from all corners of the village. So you don't have to answer that question. We don't automatically collect that information if you take the survey. But if you choose to drop a point on your home, it's just a cool, it's not a statistically valid survey or anything like that, but it's just a cool way to sort of assess, one way to participate. So now I want to get into the memorandum that you all have in front of you, and as just a reminder, we're a little bit ahead of the game on the sub-area boundaries, partly because the village identified them in the RFP. So our scope for the project, scope step 4B, describes what we'll be doing within these sub-areas, preliminary sub-area plans. So we're zooming in and we're getting a little more detailed in these specific areas than you would in a typical comprehensive plan. We're looking at things like priority development sites, access and mobility issues, parking and circulation, roadway cross sections. Really zooming in and thinking like, what is it like from the pedestrian experience, from the bicyclist experience, from the driving experience, or just what are the ways that buildings could be situated along these in these key areas. That's what sub-area planning does. It zooms in to a level that you really couldn't do community-wide necessarily. And when we get deeper into these, once we get to step 4, these will be a really graphically compelling part of the planning process, or part of the plan document. Ultimately, we'll also be doing some 3D visualizations for some or all of these sub-areas to sort of provide a sense of scale, orientation, land use. These typically aren't architectural renderings. They're usually rendered in land use colors. They're kind of blocky, just to give an idea, like what could a key redevelopment site look like if there's that, that vacant lot that's been there for example. That would be a great example of what we would call a catalyst site. If we can just show what that configuration might look like, that might help the owner and maybe a potential developer decide to actually move the needle on it. It's something that's been sitting there for a long time. So these sub areas will also include, some of them will include 3D catalyst site visualizations. So I just want to walk through them really quick. And again, these are preliminary boundaries. I'm sorry? They are, yes, preliminary boundaries. When we actually get into creating the sub-area plans, it's possible that as we work with staff that we might find, we really need to include this block also, or this just doesn't quite make sense. But for our first cut of the sub-area boundaries, this is what we have, and you all should have this map in front of you. But there are 6 sub-areas identified: the North Avenue corridor, the Metro Station corridor, the St. Charles corridor, Villa Avenue or the Old Town area, and the historic Ardmore district, and the Roosevelt Road corridor. So North Avenue corridor, I'm going to be telling you all a little bit of what you already know, but major east-west road and state route in the northern portion of Villa Park, heavily trafficked. The IDOT classifies this area as a strategic regional arterial, so it has regional significance. Obviously, you can take it all the way, all the way to Chicago if you chose to. The corridor really emphasizes vehicular movement, and there's some regional commercial encompassing on either side of this corridor. And I guess at this point, I just would like to emphasize, really this is, at this stage in the game, these aren't necessarily planning recommendations, just a high-level assessment at this point of these boundaries in these areas. So we'll be doing a deeper dive when we actually get into the planning for these study areas. Metro Station corridor really surrounds the only metro station in Villa Park, on the Union Pacific West line. Boundaries are approximately Vermont Street to the north, Division Street to the south, Yale to the west, and Douglas to the east. There's a lot of opportunity here for something like transit-oriented development, and just to define that term, it's been connotated with in some places, in some communities, with large-scale monolithic buildings, but at its core, really what transit-oriented just means is developing near the train station. So there's potential for development that takes advantage of that metro station, and that's a good thing. The St. Charles corridor, major east-west route through Villa Park. Boundaries here are Westmore Avenue to the west, Salt Creek to the east. There's a variety of retailers, restaurants, offices, and businesses along St. Charles, as you all know. Villa Avenue corridor, the Old Town area. Business district just short of at St. Charles Road to the north, Monterey Avenue to the east, Myrtle Avenue to the west, and Park Boulevard to the south. mix of residential, commercial, mixed use, institutional. There's a lot going on in the Villa Avenue area. There we go, a little glitch. Then historic Ardmore, pretty unique area. The boundaries of this study area are Princeton Avenue to the west, School Street to the north, Cornell Street to the east, Highland Avenue to the south. Again, offices, shops, taverns. There's also community events that are held within this district. Then the Roosevelt Road corridor, major regional corridor, major retail options. This is where you find some of the more big box and automobile-oriented commercial uses within the village. So each one of these is distinct, unique. When we get into the planning for these, we will take a look at things like existing form and function, what we call functional improvements. So how do people sort of navigate these depending on whether they're driving, whether they're biking, whether they're walking? Can you get to them from the nearest residential neighborhood? We'll take a look at all of that stuff and prepare some really easy to understand and navigate graphic components to the comprehensive plan for each of these specific areas. I guess I'll take any questions at this point on the sub-area boundaries.
With regards to sub-area 1, which is North Avenue, there's a portion that if you go back to it, almost the eastmost area along Villa Avenue itself, there is a portion that is highlighted in purple. However, that is currently unincorporated DuPage County property. So is the assumption that we will be looking into annexing those lands? Or is that a possibility for the plan?
It could be a possibility. There's, in Illinois state statutes, you can plan for areas outside of your jurisdiction, so we'll take a look and see if there's any particular reason that the sub-area may extend outside.
Okay.
I don't know, I couldn't say yet if that would be a recommendation, but we can see.
I think it's worth exploring to see the viability of such.
Sure.
From my position, I could say that if we didn't explore it, it's probably a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Do we
it's-
land on a recommendation to annex? TBD. Should it be part of the plan? Yes.
I would agree with that.
There's not too many places for Villa Park to grow outward at this point.
Sure.
So
You will also note on Roosevelt, there's also unincorporated portion that is in the corridor.
Fantastic. Right.
Maybe a bit more of a comment than a question, but, and I know these are preliminary, but when I look at the station area, the TOD number 2, I feel like if we're not looking at the northeast and northwest corners of Vermont and Ardmore, excuse me.
North what corner?
Northwest and northeast corners of Vermont and Ardmore, at least, that could be kind of a missed opportunity because there's low apartments and a big service parking lot, and I mean, it's private property, obviously, but I think something worth considering as you move into that. Because that's, assuming that a project like the Ecoterra project goes ahead, then you kind of have an intersection there that wants to be a 4-corner intersection, if we're only addressing 2 of the corners. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess that's a side point there is that planning for private property is also okay to do.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just saying that's, maybe it's more than the corners, maybe it's not. I mean, I leave that up to you guys as you advance, or whether you think it's worth exploring, but that's just one that jumped out at me as an opportunity.
Did you say TOD?
TOD, yes. Transit-oriented development.
Yeah, we had some internal discussions. Should we actually extend that along Ardmore until we reached the North Avenue corridor.
Yeah, and
There's pros and cons of actually abutting them, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember, I know when we did the original TOD study that predated the comprehensive plan, that was all kind of explored, but I don't know, I don't remember off the top of my head on the comprehensive plan where that all shook out last time, but just a thought.
yeah.
And to your comment, I think it is predicated on us obtaining knowledge as to what Hawthorne Development's plan is for the Eco Terrace site.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know.
even if it's not them, it's going to be somebody.
Yeah, it just feels like an area where Four Corners is
Yeah.
potentially very important.
Good point.
Anybody else have any questions or comments before they move on?
No questions.
All right. Well, in that case, I will move on. And again, going a little slow here. The next thing I just want to do, very briefly, we have an existing conditions memorandum almost fully prepared. This is a report that will be, it'll include a variety of maps. I'm going to show you a little preview of those. It's usually presented in a memorandum format, emphasis on the fact that this is sort of the baseline of existing conditions, the book report on Villa Park, if you will. Make sure that House Levine knows what we need to know about the community before we get going. It'll be pretty concise and straightforward, because we want to, sort of save the bells and whistles for the plan document. But I wanted to give you a little idea of what you'll be seeing as we run this through staff for review, and then ultimately back here to present it to all of you down the line. But really, we're sort of asking, where's the village of Villa Park today? What's that baseline of existing conditions, and how do we set the stage for the things that the comprehensive plan can accomplish? We'll also include outreach key takeaways from the online outreach that's been conducted, and the summaries of the kickoff and those activities that we already did. These are the sections that will be included in this memorandum: regional settings, an overview of the past plans and studies that the village has already completed, a demographic snapshot, sort of the population and other key demographic points that any comprehensive plan has to be built on, existing land use and development, overview of your current zoning and development regulations, current state of transportation and mobility, and then community services, facilities, and parks. So I pulled out a few maps and graphics. They're going to be a little tough to see, but this is, again, just to sort of give you the flavor of what's going to be in this memo. So existing land use, Oscar and Nihar from our team were in the village several weeks ago doing a block by block land use field work reconnaissance, taking photos and notes, and synthesizing this with the existing land use layer that the village already uses. So when we say existing land use, we're talking about what is the parcel actually being used for now. Is it a residential land use? Is it a commercial land use? Industrial? So this is built on your current existing land use data as well as our team's field observations.
Who was canvassing?
Oscar and Nihar. Nihar is Nihar. Yep. Transportation assessment. As you know, we're not alone on this project. We're working with KLOA, and they've taken a high-level overview assessment of transportation. So your existing roadway classifications, you can see here a map of the railroad and truck routes, key intersections, and things like that, bike and pedestrian systems. So there will be several transportation maps included in this memorandum. Each one of these will be accompanied with explanatory text when you see the memorandum. Community facilities. And here, even in this presentation, we've paired it with some of the takeaways from that outreach survey that's gotten such good results so far. So this is, that baseline of information for your public safety, your government administration, education, other public facilities, the library, things like that. Where are they in the village? And again, just a factual baseline of existing conditions paired with issues and opportunities and key takeaways from the outreach so far. Parks and open space assessment. And there will be several other maps included in that memorandum. And again, we have it's basically complete in an internal review. So it'll be going to Mark and Stephanie for their review soon, and then it'll be coming back to you all for review. Next steps for this project. We are going to continue public engagement. In fact, we'll be working with Mark and Stephanie to schedule probably a day or so of key stakeholder interviews and focus groups. The business community workshop and the community-wide visioning workshop. As we wrap up the existing conditions report, it's the right time to do this sort of public in-person kickoff. Online engagement will continue, so there's more opportunity if people haven't done so already to take the community survey, participate in map.social. Those are still open for participation. And I'll show you what map.social looks like in just a second. And then as we wrap up community visioning and we get the sort of thumbs up from staff on the existing conditions report, we will move into step 3 of this process, which is plan visioning and key recommendations. So what's that long-term aspirational vision for the village? Where do we want to be in the next couple of decades? What does Villa Park look like in 2045? And what are the key recommendations? Another way to think of that is like, what are the 10 things that we need to talk about for housing? What are the 10 things that the plan needs to address, or the 10 sections of the economic development chapter of the plan? So by the time we get out of key stakeholder interviews, business community workshop, and community visioning workshop, we should have a pretty good handle on those things facing Villa Park. Again, if you haven't visited it yet, the project website is live. It's linked, I believe it's linked on the village's homepage as well. So obviously people are finding it since we're at near 700 participants. So that's also the hub for those online tools that I mentioned. I'm sorry. The community questionnaire and map.social. And then here's what map.social is looking like as of the last time we checked it. This is public. Anybody can go there and take a look at the comments and issues and opportunities that your neighbors are dropping. So I'd encourage, if you haven't had a chance to do this, or you can share this with a friend or family member who lives in Villa Park, please ask them to do so. And that's what I have for you. If there's any final questions or anything, I'm available.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Nope.
So with that participation of the online outreach, I mean, what's a number we want to see? Like what? That seems like a nice number, but I don't know if that's, obviously that we don't want to rest on that number, right? I mean, that's.
Yeah, I think we get that question. We get it a lot. Often it's when it's much lower. And what they say, what number should we be shooting for? I don't think there's any right number. And like I mentioned, this is not a statistically valid survey. So it's not like we have to hit 10% of the village population or anything like that. It's just one of the tools in the arsenal of getting the word out about the comprehensive plan. So maybe you're somebody who wants to do everything. You want to do the questionnaire. You want to do map.social. You're also a key stakeholder interview participant, and then you also want to come out for both workshops, community and business workshop. There's people that do that. But there is some duplication in the types of questions that we're asking, the feedback that we're seeking, so that we can sort of get some consistency, and by the time we wrap it all up. That said, near 700 before we've even announced it at a community visioning workshop. That's pretty impressive, and we've worked in bigger places that have had less turnout, for sure. I don't want to sidestep the question, but I think...
No, I think that's a fair answer. Yeah,
I'll give it a little more
makes
direct.
sense.
We're shooting for 1,000, is what I've been telling the village board.
Well, that's...
Yeah, that's the right answer. Mine's the competitive answer.
I would say...
Yeah, but even on that, we're at 2/3 of 1,000. I mean, and we haven't even...
Yeah.
We're really early, so to speak, in the outreach.
Very much on track for that, I would guess. So,
It's encouraging.
I mean, just a point of reference, we worked in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and there's 265,000 people there, and I think we had 2,000 survey takers. So, more people, but far smaller percentage of the community. And then we're working in I won't say the town's name, but we're working in a town of about 40,000, and they've only had 100. And they have a pretty engaged, plugged-in staff that's doing a good job publicizing it. We have good turnout in person, but just not online. So some communities, certain parts of it take off, and others don't.
Well, that map was encouraging, too. I mean, it would one thing if you was all concentrated in a pocket, like, whoa, what's happening here? But that was pretty much an even distribution across the footprint of the community.
Yeah, and sometimes we can, this rarely happens. I mean, it's a comprehensive plan. People aren't that interested in skewing the results or anything, but we can also audit the results and see if there's a clump of people in one area, or like somebody consistently puts the same answer, and we haven't really seen that here. So.
I'm sorry, but I tried once, but...
No bots, filling out the,
Yeah, we can see the back end and see if that's happening. So.
Any more questions or comments on this from up here, or does anybody in the public have any questions or comments on this before they wrap up?
Thank you.
All right, thanks for your time.
Thank you all so much. Good to see you all. Thanks.
Great.
All right. Any public comments on non-agenda items, comments from the board liaison, or comments from staff?
We do not have anything this evening.
Okay. Any comments from the commission? All right.
Yes. I have we're in item 5, right? Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, I have a current project that an issue has come up, and I think it's an issue that has sort of, is a situation that we might want to sort of look at more closely. And it ties into the Sterling petition. There was one of the items that was sort of brought up in the discussion relative to Sterling, which was things hanging over the public sidewalk. I know on that presentation and that model that was that they had, there was some sort of a canopy at the sidewalk at Park. And as in that discussion, we discovered that the zoning language speaks to not having anything projecting over the public right-of-way. But as we were sort of looking at these various MX district locations, and if we're pushing buildings up to sidewalks, then a lot of items such as awnings and canopies and signs and lighting, where does that sort of fall into? And or it seems like all of that stuff would be precluded and obviously prohibited. So I don't know how we want to talk about that and bring that up, because I look at the Union project as well, too, the renderings that were provided for that, which is right around the corner, and they've got signs and canopies and such that are, hanging over the sidewalk, and so as we're getting into these MX districts, I think some of those things are coming to light more so now.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically with the zoning ordinance update. I do remember when we were working on the TOD overlay that in the design standards for that, I know that like awnings over windows and things were something we weren't, like that was a design aesthetic that we were okay with.
Yeah.
In those conversations. I can't recall specifically from the zoning ordinance update. I know I think there's a contradictory passage between the design guidelines and the actual MX district ordinance itself that makes it a little bit complicated to, it doesn't make it complicated because from a interpretational standpoint,
One's guidelines, the other's code.
Right.
one's guidelines, one's code, and even if they were both code, the more stringent code would govern
Correct.
by the by the way our ordinance is worded. So I think that's something that's worth staff review and discussion.
Have you guys been noticing any submissions relative to signs and, within awnings or canopies or anything that might sort of touch upon these code language?
We've had a few sign applications of late, but they were for swapping out a panel as opposed to a new sign, so existing non-conforming.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do that, that's not a big deal. And with the review of new structures, like Sterling's recent,
Yeah.
the design, yep, you gotta move that back. That's part of the permit review, not so
Yeah.
much that, the variation review, but.
Right.
But the reality is that we're allowed a new building that doesn't need variations or anything to build at 0.
Yeah.
Great. But then when you come in secondarily and ask for signage, lighting, all the things, awnings, code specifically says, shall not extend into the right-of-way.
Yeah, and my
They have by right to go to 0.
Yeah.
You're by right. It's as if you're setting them up for failure.
Yeah, and my opinion on that is that I'm not opposed to that, and I think especially in the TOD area and Villa and Ardmore,
Yeah.
I mean, it's an existing aesthetic, and it's just a matter of how we codify it in a way that
Yeah.
it doesn't get too busy, but that, it remains, it allows that character to be continued into new buildings, but in a way that's controlled or controllable. There's a number of ways to do that, obviously, but.
Yeah, the encroachment provision allows up to 3 feet in front of it, but not past the right-of-way.
Correct.
So instead of allowing up to 0, maybe it should be a 3-foot minimum front yard setback and just put make it simpler so people don't come into this issue when they've already constructed a building and we didn't know you're putting an awning on. That's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could have been that, it could be that simple of a revision. I'm not suggesting that. It could just be, you know what, guys? 0 is actually not a good idea. You get a 3-foot separation, well, guess what? You can actually now do foundation plantings and use that as part of your outdoor dining if you're going to do it, depending what the use is. Like, it actually gives you a little bit of flexibility. Because they already said 3 feet, I'm okay with extending. But you could also have a 0 lot line.
Rebecca, any questions, thoughts on that at all?
Be worth a discussion, looking into.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we adjourn?
So as noted, we'll dive into this whole thing, but because of this, this is now on our initial review, we're going to make additional comment that if you're planning on ever doing anything in the future, make sure that you know 0 means 0 with no street, so maybe you want to design it a little bit back, even though it's not code, right?
Right.
Now, this is part of that conversation we have with the engineers and architects on the front end, because it's coming to light right now.
Yeah.
As new developments in the MX districts are coming up, this is now on our radar, even before we change the codification, right?
Right. Okay. All right, if nobody's got anything else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, motion seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.